them. So there's a lot of recipes that are your traditional sugar cookie and so forth. We, again, are going to take a little bit of an Ayurvedic twist on this. So instead of using an all-purpose flour, we're going to use a whole wheat flour. We're going to be using some ghee instead of just traditional butter. Going to use some maple syrup instead of sugar, and adding in a little bit of ginger and cinnamon for anti-inflammatory properties. So very, very similar to your traditional cookie recipe, just a little bit of a twist. So let's begin. We're going to start with 2 cups of the flour. We have to mix our dry ingredients separate from the wet ingredients. So we start with 2 cups of the flour. Next, we add the baking soda. And baking soda, we need half a teaspoon. Oh, baking powder, excuse me. Baking powder, not baking soda. Half a teaspoon of baking powder. Quarter of a teaspoon of salt, or a little more. 1 teaspoon of cinnamon. Half a teaspoon of ginger. We're just going to mix those all together. I actually want the big bowl for my wet ingredients, so I'm going to slop this over here. And then for the wet ingredients, we're going to take half a cup of ghee. And sometimes your ghee is a little bit, I had mine in the refrigerator, which you do not have to refrigerate ghee, but it makes it a little bit harder to get into your measuring cup. And then a half a cup of maple syrup. So again, we're using this instead of sugar. You could also use honey if you're more of a honey person. Very nice. And so then we're going to mix that together until it is nice and smooth. So again, hindsight on this one, if you have your ghee room temperature, it'll mix a little bit easier. This will take just a moment. Another option, I like the ghee, I like the butter flavor. Another option would be coconut oil. And then we're gonna add in 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract. Mix that all together. And now we'll start adding in our dry. Do this a little bit at a time, so we can kind of get it mixed in there really nicely. As you know, when you start mixing it, it'll start getting a little bit more and more firm. I can tell it's starting to firm up. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take some plastic wrap, place it in there, put it in the refrigerator for about 2 hours to allow it to really chill and firm up. One last little bit of a knead just to make sure that it's all really, really mixed in nicely. There you see we have the starter of our dough, a nice little round ball. We'll wrap it up. And place it in the refrigerator and come back in 2 hours to roll it out and start to cut our cookies. All right, so we're back. The dough chilled for about 2 hours. You could actually do it for as short as 30 minutes if you want. You just want it to be nice and firm so it's ready for the rolling. You take a little bit of flour, you put it down on your countertop, and then you take your chunk of dough and you begin to make it flat. Now, I like to get it kind of mostly flat before I start rolling it. Everybody probably has a little bit of a different strategy. I just find this helps making the rolling a little bit easier. And then you take your rolling pin and you roll. Now you don't, at least with our cookie cutters, we don't want them to be too thin. So whatever cookie cutters you use, just kind of make sure that you kind of have a little bit of a guide, because you want to be able to obviously get all the shape that you can from your cookie. I feel like that is actually probably pretty good. So then take your cookie cutter. I actually like to put a little bit of flour on my cookie cutter too, just so it doesn't stick. And you come right through. That's beautiful shaping. Work around any cracks and so forth that you have in your dough. All right, and then as you pull them out, you can get your cookie sheet and put a piece of parchment paper over top. This way you don't have to use additional sprays if you don't want. And then you can begin to set your perfectly shaped cookies on your sheet. And we're just going to keep repeating that until we have enough cookies for everyone for each of the 7 chakras. So let's do it. So that is 1 tray of Muladhara. All right, put that in the oven. We're gonna let that bake for about 10 to 12 minutes. So setting the alarm for 10 minutes. We'll check it, should just be kind of crispy on the outside. And then in the meantime, what I'll do is I'm going to put the rest of the dough back in the fridge so that it starts to firm up again for the next chakra.